Hello, everyone. I hope you can see us. This is Marina Buxev and Kevin Walker from the RPH Ally Herbalism channel. So this is our first ever live show. And I'm not sure if you're seeing it live or not. It could be pre-recorded if you're on LinkedIn, but everywhere else we should be live. And basically, we wanted to start the show off with just talking about whole plant medicine and what are the benefits of utilizing the whole plant. We hear a lot about whole plants as food, right? Whole foods. And I think we've already established that that's the way to go. Whole food is the way that our body knows how to process, make everything bioavailable, make use and metabolize all the constituents that it needs to process for the biological processes that we have, to support all the systems and to detoxify from toxins with our liver and our kidneys and other organs of elimination. So basically, whole plants is the whole point of herbalism. So you're actually utilizing the whole plant with minimal processing and making those compounds and phytochemicals more bioavailable for your body to use. However, we also study which specific parts of plants have been used traditionally for the best safety and efficacy profiles. So that in itself is kind of a science of, just gathering the information. And now we actually have actual science and studies backing some of those observations up. So it's really fascinating. And I personally, once I learned this, you can't unlearn it. So I'm always a proponent of trying to use the least processed form of things, both as food and as medicine. And herbs are right at that intersection where a lot of the times we're using them for extra nutrient dense properties because our bodies need that support. We're not meeting those nutritional needs. And then if we are eating processed foods, then we need even more nutrients to help process it out of the body. Right. So it's kind of the way that traditionally we would look for the medicinal qualities in our foods, and that is how herbs and spices became worth its weight in gold, right? They used to be the most valuable commodities and used to be traded. And this is how a lot of spice like routes and merchant places got established, because we were wanting to trade these medicinal foods and spices. So I'll turn it over to you, Kevin. I've talked a lot. What's your opinion on whole plants as medicine?
The funny thing is, Marina, I know that you could go so much further and like the amount of knowledge you have, which is incredible. But for me, when I was thinking our previous conversations about whole plant and why they matter so much, really brought me back to a really interesting intersect, right? And I'm a tangential guy, so I'll bring it back to those two tangents crossing. Is me having a background in agriculture, growing up as a farm kid, it was very selective on what kind of hay and what time the hay was cut and the moisture content of the hay, and making sure that, the leaves are staying on the hay for animals to be able to consume so that they gain weight appropriately. They have the caloric elements that are necessary. And it made me laugh that we're thinking about this so significantly about animals. And yet for us, you and I are like, oh, great, I can go to the grocery store and see Twinkies and ding dongs and everything else that's fully available. We're feeding our kids and just laughing like, look at the way we've scientifically analyzed, the agricultural industry. And yet what we're consuming, we don't take that much time and thought into. So just from that simplistic standpoint, I loved whole plant. But really when it comes to the spice routes, I wanted to get into that a little bit more, Marina. Like when it came to traditional things that were of high value and that we're cultivating, modern day medicine, what things do you think of that we don't traditionally, like in Western medicine, we don't realize have roots in whole plant?
Well, I think a lot of times when we think about like culinary delights, right, and extravagant tastings and kind of activating our senses, it's like very exciting and builds curiosity. And we also love eating socially, right? We're social creatures and we love to just go out and relax and have fun with our friends. And usually eating is involved in some way, right? Which is why it's such a complex issue that everybody has to eat to live, everybody has to eat to survive. But there's just so much controversy around like, well, how do you eat the best things? How do you keep yourself healthy? What's the best food? How do you eat? There's like so many theories about it. But the bottom line is, and then there's orthorexia, right? I just wanted to mention that. So it can get confusing, and it can definitely bridge into mental health and eating disorders and things like that. But for the most part, we evolved with eating, and then we became social creatures. And so this is how we celebrate life. We go out, we eat with our families. Hopefully we have family dinners somewhat consistently, and it's just a way to honor the fact that we have food, to express gratitude for the food, to allow our bodies to rest and digest. And so when it comes to creating and curating amazing, beautiful, delicious meals and recipes, it's definitely an art form, right? And a lot of people, I think, chefs included, probably don't realize that the taste of the food actually has to do with their medicinal qualities or any kind of qualities. And so it really translates the nutritional value and whatever medicinal potential value that the food has is actually translated into our experience of the meal, how we taste it, how we perceive it, and then pairing different things together and cooking them together or pairing them in a meal or in a drink together can actually compound these effects and also be synergistic for the qualities that we're wanting to elicit from the food and the potential benefits that they could have. So I think a lot of people just don't realize that everything could literally be a medicine or a poison, right? It just depends on how you're using it and what quantity, and the dose makes the poison, right? So this beautiful experience of having a meal, it could be like the best thing and a way of self-care and a way of nourishing your body, or it could be consuming a bunch of processed empty calories to try to drown out some kind of emotional turmoil. Mm-hmm. So about the spices have so many benefits. Not only do they make things taste really good, but those tastes actually translate into therapeutic or medicinal actions according to traditional medicines, right? And we have 4 main tastes in our mouth. So we have 4 taste receptors, plus potentially the 5th one being umami. But we have sweet, salty, we have sour, and we have bitter. Those are the main 4. And we also have non-specific heat sensing thermoregulating receptors, and those detect the spiciness element of foods. So spices in general will elicit a pretty strong flavor profile, and you don't need that much. You can use very small quantities of spices to elicit very interesting kind of effects, especially taste-wise. And then they also preserve food. They're really high in antioxidants, and a lot of them are anti-inflammatory. So I think people just don't realize, for example, something as simple as rosemary, right? Mm-hmm. People use it all the time. Yep. Thyme is another one. People use oregano. Oregano has become pretty popular as an antimicrobial, but these are really just all spices. Garlic, such a simple, garlic or onion, but these are powerful.
Yeah, I think that all of those, like when I think of things that, if we're looking for anti-inflammatory processes and we're looking at turmeric and as you mentioned with garlic, like there's so many things that we can utilize from those. And when I'm thinking about Western medicine, like how we've utilized whole plant and pulled it into Western medicine, oftentimes, Marina, like aspirin, for example, and willow bark, some of the connections that are in the background, when we do the purification process, which is funny because I think we have a very positive connotation of what purification means. And even though it can have some significantly negative impacts on the way we actually process foods. Tell me this, Marina, like when you're looking at whole plant and you're trying to be able to help someone first start into utilizing whole plants and what they're doing and convince them that whole plant is kind of the direction to go, like where do you point them, Marina? Like how do they start into recognizing whole plant as being beneficial for them medicinally and culturally?
Yeah, so I just want to point out, like, the more we isolate and purify something, we are reducing it to just that one phytochemical or that one active ingredient, which really narrows in both the therapeutic effect profile, but also the side effect profile. So it upregulates the potential for side effects. And when we're using the whole plant, we have something called the entourage effect, which they're using a lot now in the cannabis space. And that's really the premise of all herbalism, that when you are using things in its natural form without extracting or, standardizing things, you're actually allowing synergy to happen and you're mitigating the potential for side effects. And then there's also this net beneficial effect that happens because nature has everything in a specific and perfect proportion. And even though it is difficult to study for confounding variables because of the same reason, nature still accounts for that. So even though things are not going to be exactly the same batch to batch, like you mentioned, the whole moisture and soil and nutrition and conditions that plants grow in will change from batch to batch. And even though now we are trying to control it in the cannabis, for example, industry, it's still going to have slight differences, but it's still going to be in proportion and relationship to the other constituents. So again, it just maintains that integrity and the safety. Okay. So to answer your question, how would I start to introduce whole plants is simply through diet or through food, right? Yes. Or through drinks would be the easiest step. So whether somebody's making themselves a tea, that is the most simple, but still a powerful thing. Like, I think I mentioned it a while back, but people don't realize when they drink coffee, right? They are actually ingesting a plant. And if they're not drinking coffee, they're probably drinking tea, right? So we are consuming plants in a medicinal way, and cannabis, same thing. So many people used to self-medicate essentially with either cannabis or other psychedelic substances or even alcohol, right? Because they're trying to elicit certain response. They're trying to deal with stress or anxiety in their own way. So the plants are mitigating some of these effects. And so everything can be a medicine or poison. So if somebody is wanting just to add some medicinal benefits of plants, I would say just look at the food that you're eating. Each food can be a medicine. Add the spices, add the teas, add a bunch of herbal teas, and your body actually responds so much better to something that is available in the plant form, that your body doesn't have to go and break down a capsule, and it doesn't have to process the extra additives or artificial colorings that pills, for example, may have, right? So it's just a cleaner way, and it actually benefits people with weaker constitutions, right? If they're just so weak, they have so many things going on and so many problems, we really want to lessen the pill burden. So just even starting out with therapeutic grade teas. So, kind of making a strong brew, right? Not necessarily like those tea bags, but actually making a medicinal brew from a concentrated, form of the plant and the whole plant, let's say whole leaf, or making a decoction, which is, boiling it down for a while so you can kind of break down those plant walls, or mushroom teas where you boil it down for a long time because of the chitin and you want to just liberate all those polysaccharides. So that would be my simplest way to either use them as powders in food and spices, or make yourself a tea. And then the next level up would be a tincture.
Got it. So for you then, Marina, it's not really, I have an uncle that says, Kevin, I have high blood pressure. It's not like, hey, let's get whole plant in there to be able to help you. It's, hey, let's look at it as being like, something is now part of your daily life. Like, how can I incorporate this into my daily life rather than just thinking about it in the allopathic way of, hey, let's target something with this. We need to have a more holistic approach to incorporating the overall like whole plant into what you're doing. And that's the typical like first step you try to take with individuals.
Yeah, you have to look at the whole picture. So if somebody's really interested in herbs and believes that this could be the answer, I'll definitely get them to have an herb. And there's certainly herbs that I think of for high blood pressure as my go-tos. But also these same herbs usually have an effect on the nervous system. They also affect the liver. They help the whole body kind of function better. So one plant is not just going to do one thing, it's going to do a million different things.
Yeah. No, I think that's perfect, because I think that's the one thing we miss often is we're just always looking to, the boat has holes in it and we want to plug them with something, right? And we don't realize that we're taking on water over the side, and we need to keep that water out first or we're going to go down. And I think incorporating whole plant and that overall mentality you're talking about, to do more for the body overall incorporated is just absolutely fantastic. Well, we're at time, Marina. I know we've got a few viewers on there and we had a couple questions we'll hopefully get to next time. But did you want to sign us off, Marina, or anything you want to say to folks before we say bye-bye?
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in to our first episode. Definitely keep the questions coming. You can message me on all my platforms. I'm happy to answer you or cover one of your topics in the next show. So thank you for tuning in. This is Marina and Kevin.
Bye-bye.